Up until the ancient gates, time stands still. In the ruins of the past, I feel a gentle thrill. Stone faces smiling through the ages, wise and bold. Angkor Thom, you're a story to be told. Angkor Thom.
Welcome back, everybody, for another deep dive. This time, we're taking a look at the layout of Angkor Thom. Not just the buildings themselves, but trying to understand what the whole design might have meant symbolically. You know, like what were the Khmer trying to say with it? And I've got to say, I've got a pretty interesting stack of sources for this one.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, we've got like usual suspects, Wikipedia, some scholarly articles. But I even managed to dig up a traveler's guide from back in the day. So that should be fun.
Wow. It's kind of like we're trying to crack a code, like a visual code that's like, what, 800 years old? Using all these different pieces to try and understand it.
Exactly. And even the name itself, Angkor Thom, it means great city, right?
Right.
But I noticed some of the sources also call it Angkor Thom,
Yeah.
which I guess means the same thing. So is there a reason for that? Like why two names?
Well, I think it kind of shows how, our understanding of the city has changed over time. Like, Angkor Thom is actually closer to how it would have been pronounced in the original Khmer language.
Interesting.
But Angkor Thom is the name that kind of stuck, through the centuries. And actually, to make things even more interesting, the city that we call Angkor Thom wasn't even the first city on that site.
Really? So they built on top of another city?
Yeah, kind of. They actually built right over parts of an older city called Yasodharapura. And to make things even more complicated, the name Angkor Thom didn't even appear until the 16th century.
Wow, so this is already more complex than I thought.
Oh, yeah.
So we've got layers of history, literally.
Right.
Okay, but let's talk about what's actually there at Angkor Thom. I mean, you've got those massive walls, 8 meters high.
Incredible.
And this huge moat. And all those gates, leading into the city. It's mind-blowing to imagine the scale of it all.
Absolutely.
So, I mean, was all of that purely for defense? Or was there something more going on? Symbolically, I mean.
Well, if you look at the bigger picture, it seems like it was probably both, right?
Yeah.
I mean, those walls would definitely provided protection.
Oh, yeah.
But they also created a defined sacred space. And some scholars think that the walls and the moat actually represent something even grander.
Okay, like what?
Like they could represent the continents and oceans surrounding Mount Meru.
No, Meru.
Yeah, it's this mythical mountain that's like the center of the universe in Hindu and Buddhist cosmology.
So they designed the whole city as a microcosm of the cosmos.
That's one theory, yeah. And it gets even more intriguing when you consider the bridges leading into the city.
Oh, yeah. What about them?
Well, they're decorated with scenes from the churning of the ocean of milk. It's this Hindu creation myth.
Oh, right. Yeah, I was reading about that. It's the one with the gods and the demons, right? Pulling on this giant serpent to churn the ocean.
Yeah, exactly. It's pretty wild imagery.
Definitely memorable. But it seems a little odd to find a Hindu myth front and center in a city that was built by a Buddhist king.
Yeah, that's a great observation. It really challenges our assumptions about how separate these religions actually were, back then.
Yeah.
I mean, King Jayavarman VII, the one who built Angkor Thom, he was a devout Buddhist. But it's clear that the whole region had this mix of spiritual traditions going on.
Right.
So it's possible that the churning of the ocean of milk, maybe it was chosen because of its universal themes, creation, balance, stuff like that. Things that would resonate with both Hindus and Buddhists.
So it's more about finding a common symbolic language, one that spoke to everyone, regardless of their specific beliefs.
Exactly. And it reminds us that we shouldn't try to, put history in these neat little boxes.
Right.
Which actually brings us to another element of Angkor Thom that's open to, a ton of interpretation.
What's that?
The face towers.
Ah, yes. The face towers. Those giant stone faces staring out from the city gates in the Bayon Temple.
Yeah, they're pretty unforgettable, right?
Totally, but who or what are they supposed to represent?
Well, that's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
Seems like it.
It's a debate that's been going on for centuries.
Right.
Yeah. Some people think they represent Avalokiteshvara. That's the bodhisattva of compassion in Mahayana Buddhism.
Okay.
Others say it's Vajrasattva, a Buddha associated with enlightenment. And then there are others who think they could be Hindu deities like Brahma or Shiva. Or even, get this, King Jayavarman VII himself.
It's like we're seeing that same blending of influences again, Buddhist and Hindu elements all mixed together.
Absolutely. And it reminds us that history is rarely straightforward.
Right.
We have to be open to ambiguity and consider lots of different perspectives.
I like that. Speaking of different perspectives, I came across this account from a Chinese diplomat who visited Angkor Thom in the late 13th century.
Oh, right.
And he described these grand processions that King Jayavarman VII would have with hundreds of women from the palace all carrying candles, even during the day. It's such a powerful image.
It really is. Zhu Dogwan's account is incredible. It gives us such a vivid picture of life in Angkor Thom. I mean, this is centuries after it was built, and the city was still thriving.
Wow.
It really shows how important it was. It's just sad that so much of what he described, especially the wooden structures, they're all gone now.
Yeah, it's amazing to think that what we see today, the stone stuff, it's only a fraction of what was there.
I know, it's hard to even imagine.
Before we got sidetracked by all those amazing details, you mentioned something about Angkor Thom being designed as a mandala. Can you break that down a little for those of us who aren't experts in ancient symbolism?
Sure. A mandala is basically a sacred diagram, like a visual representation of the universe.
Okay.
And it's used in a bunch of different religions and spiritual traditions, including, Hinduism and Buddhism, to kind of show the structure of the cosmos, how everything is interconnected. And in the case of Angkor Thom, some scholars believe that the whole city, the whole thing, was actually designed as this giant three-dimensional mandala.
Okay, yeah. I think I see where you're going with this. So the city walls would be the continents, right?
Right.
And the moat around it would be the oceans.
Exactly.
And then the Bayon Temple right in the center, that would be like Mount Meru, that mythical mountain at the center of everything.
Yeah, exactly. It's like a giant cosmic map laid out in stone and earth.
That's incredible. And even those bridges leading into the city, with those carvings of the gods and demons pulling on that serpent, what was it called?
The naga.
Right, the naga.
Yeah.
They all fit into this mandala idea too, right?
Yeah. Some scholars think those bridges actually symbolize, like a rainbow bridge.
Yeah.
That mythical pathway between the earthly realm and the heavens.
It's just mind-blowing, the level of thought and planning that went into this. King Jayavarman VII wasn't just building a city, he was creating a sacred space, a reflection of the universe itself.
Yeah, exactly. And it really says something about the ambition and power of the Khmer Empire, Angkor Thom was meant to be this microcosm of the cosmos, this place where, earthly power and divine power met.
So, okay, if we're looking at Angkor Thom as this, cosmic diagram, this mandala, what can we learn from the different pieces of it? What do those temples and structures inside the city walls tell us about how they saw the world?
Well, it seems like each temple probably had its own specific symbolic meaning and function, but taken together, they all create this impression of a sacred, ordered space, like the Bayon Temple, for example.
Oh, yeah. With all those face towers, I'm so kind of hung up on those.
I know, right?
Who are they supposed to be again?
That's part of what makes them so fascinating, isn't it?
Yeah.
All those different interpretations. But if we think about Angkor Thom as this mandala, maybe those faces, no matter who they actually are, maybe they represent something bigger, like the all-seeing nature of the divine, that idea that everything is interconnected.
Oh, I like that. It totally fits with the whole mandala concept, right? The unity and interconnectedness. What about some of the other structures? Like the Terrace of the Elephants and the Terrace of the Leper King. Those were part of the royal palace, right?
Right.
I remember seeing pictures. There were these grand platforms with all those intricate carvings. I can just imagine the kinds of ceremonies and processions that must happen there.
Yeah, those were probably the spaces where the king, as the earthly representative of the divine, would appear before his people. So again, it's reinforcing that link between earthly power and cosmic order.
It's like architecture as a way of expressing something much deeper than just, practical needs. It's embodying these beliefs and values.
Absolutely, and that's especially true for ancient cultures, right?
Yeah.
Where monumental architecture often played a really important religious and symbolic role. Like Angkor Thom is a perfect example of that.
Yeah. It definitely makes you think about ancient cities differently.
Yeah.
It's not just about the buildings themselves, but understanding the ideas and beliefs behind them.
Exactly. And that's what makes exploring a place like Angkor Thom so rewarding. You're not just traveling through space, you're traveling through time and thought. You're getting this glimpse into a totally different way of seeing the world.
You know, one thing that really struck me looking at these images of Angkor Thom is how much nature has kind of taken over. Like trees growing through the stones, vines wrapped around the towers.
I know.
It's beautiful, but also kind of haunting.
Yeah, it's this powerful reminder that civilizations rise and fall, that time keeps moving forward. But it also shows you the power of nature, how it can reclaim even the most massive human creations. And in a way, it adds another layer of symbolism to Angkor Thom.
How so?
Well, remember how we were talking about the mandala and that interconnectedness of everything? Well, the fact that nature is so intertwined with Angkor Thom now, you could see it as like a visual manifestation of that concept. Even in decay, there's this harmony, like this blending of the human and the natural.
That's a really beautiful way to think about it. It's like Angkor Thom is still evolving, still telling its story, even in its current state.
Exactly. And that actually brings us to another really fascinating aspect of Angkor Thom's symbolism. The city as a microcosm of the whole Khmer Empire.
Okay, now I'm really curious. How does that work?
Well, think about the layout again. You have the walled enclosure, right? That represents the boundaries of the empire. The moat symbolizes the protective waters surrounding the kingdom. And inside those walls, you have the palace, the religious structures, the administrative buildings, all the essential parts of a functioning society.
So it's like the city itself is this miniature version of the Khmer world. It reflects their political structure, their religion, their social order, everything.
Exactly. Just as the mandala represents the interconnectedness of everything in the universe, Angkor Thom may have served as this visual reminder of how all the different parts of the Khmer Empire were interconnected, all working together to support the king and maintain that cosmic harmony.
Wow. It really makes you appreciate the vision of the Khmer people.
It does, doesn't it? And it's important to remember that Angkor Thom wasn't just like a static monument. It was a living city. It was always evolving, adapting to the changing needs and beliefs of its people. And we know that even after Jayavarman VII died, later kings continued to modify the city. They added new structures, reflecting their own beliefs and agendas.
So even though we tend to think of Angkor Thom as, Jayavarman VII's creation, it's clear that it continued to be important to the Khmer people for generations after him.
Absolutely. It speaks to the lasting power of this symbolic landscape,
Yeah.
Angkor Thom wasn't just a collection of buildings. It was a powerful expression of Khmer identity. It was a reminder of their past, their connection to the cosmos, their place in the universe.
It makes you wonder if there are other cities designed with this kind of profound symbolic dimension, like other cities that were planned as mandalas.
That's a great question, and it's something we can talk more about in our next segment. We can delve into some other ancient cities that used cosmic symbolism in their designs, compare them to Angkor Thom, see what we can learn.
That sounds fascinating. I can't wait to hear more about that.
That'll be fun.
So you were saying that Angkor Thom isn't the only city that used cosmic symbolism in its design. What are some other examples?
Oh yeah, there's some really interesting ones. One that comes to mind is
Teotihuacan.
Yeah, it's in Mesoamerica, and like Angkor Thom, it was laid out on this grid aligned with the cardinal directions.
Okay.
And its major monuments, things like the Pyramid of the Sun and the Pyramid of the Moon, they were positioned to align with specific celestial events.
So both Angkor Thom and Teotihuacan, they were designed to reflect the movements of the sun and the stars.
Exactly. And in both cases, those alignments would have played a huge role in the daily lives and rituals of the people who live there. I mean, can you imagine witnessing the sunrise over the Pyramid of the Sun on the spring equinox?
Wow.
It must have been incredible, this powerful reminder of the city's connection to the cosmos.
Yeah, I can see how that kind of experience would create a real sense of awe and wonder. This feeling that the city was in harmony with the universe.
Right, and that's a key element of cosmic symbolism in urban planning. It's about creating that sense of sacred space, that place where the earthly and the divine realms kind of intersect.
So even though Angkor Thom and Teotihuacan, they were worlds apart, geographically and culturally, they both shared this idea of aligning their cities with the cosmos.
It's pretty amazing when you think about it. It kind of speaks to this universal human impulse, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, I think so.
Across cultures, throughout history, people have always tried to connect with something bigger than themselves, to understand their place in the grand scheme of things. And architecture, especially the way we design our cities, it's often been this way to express those, aspirations.
And makes you think about modern cities. Have we lost some of that connection to the cosmos, that sense of sacred space?
It's an interesting question. I mean, we might not see these like overt expressions of cosmic symbolism in our cities today, but I think that desire to create spaces that inspire us, that evoke a sense of wonder, I think that's still there. Think about how we're drawn to parks and green spaces in cities, or how skyscrapers reaching for the sky can almost feel transcendent.
It's true. And even in our own homes, we try to create spaces that feel peaceful, harmonious, connected to nature in some way. Maybe those impulses are like echoes of that ancient desire to align ourselves with the cosmos.
Yeah, maybe. It reminds us that even with all our technology and advancements, we're still connected to that same universe that inspired those ancient city builders. And speaking of those ancient builders, I often wonder about the challenges they faced.
Oh, yeah.
Building these incredible cities without, the tools and technology we have today.
No, right? It's mind-boggling. Moving those massive stones, carving those intricate reliefs, building those towering temples, all without modern engineering, without any of the equipment we take for granted.
The logistics must have been unbelievable. It would require so much manpower, such sophisticated knowledge and organization.
It really shows you how important these projects were to them.
Exactly. They weren't just building for practical purposes. They were creating lasting expressions of their beliefs, their values, their connection to something bigger than themselves. The sheer effort that went into these cities, it shows us just how much they meant to the people who built them.
And that's why those cities continue to fascinate us, right? Centuries later, they're not just ruins, they're windows into the minds of the people who built them. They invite us to explore different ways of seeing the world, our place in it.
Couldn't have said it better myself. And I think a key takeaway for our listeners today is this. The next time you visit an ancient city, or even just walk through your own city, take a minute to consider the symbolism. What stories are the buildings around you telling? What beliefs and values shape those spaces? You might be surprised by what you find.
That's a great point. It reminds us that history is all around us, if we just know where to look. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive into the symbolic world of Angkor Thom. It's been a fascinating journey.
It really has. My pleasure. Until next time, keep exploring and keep questioning.